Are you struggling to write the perfect first page for your novel? I feel your struggle. And that's why I've compiled a list of 7 different strategies that are tried and tested by famous authors and that you can replicate to hook your readers on page 1. To start off with, we have the retrospective hook. This is my favorite one because it instantly grabs your reader's attention and puts them on the edge of their seat. In this strategy, you reveal certain significant details from your story on the first page itself in order to raise alarming questions in your reader's mind. Let's understand how this strategy works with the help of an example. So here I have Kindred by Octavia Butler. Let's look at the first page. I lost an arm on my last trip home. My left arm, and I lost about a year of my life, and much of the comfort and security I had not valued until it was gone. When the police released Kevin, he came to the hospital and stayed with me so that I would know I hadn't lost him too. But before he could come to me, I had to convince the police that he did not belong in jail. That took time. The police were shadows who appeared intermittently at my bedside to ask me questions I had to struggle to understand. "How did you hurt your arm?" they asked. "Who hurt you?" My attention was captured by the word they used, hurt, as though I had scratched my arm. Didn't they think I knew it was gone? "Accident," I heard myself whisper. It was an accident. They began asking me about Kevin. Their words seemed to blur together at first, and I paid little attention. After a while, though, I replayed them and suddenly realized that these men were trying to blame Kevin for hurting my arm. "No," I shook my head weakly against the pillow. "Not Kevin. Is he here? Can I see him?" "Who then?" they persisted. I tried to think through the drugs, through the distant pain, but there was no honest explanation I could give them. None they would believe. Notice how the protagonist reveals a jarring detail in the first sentence itself. I lost an arm. Now that is something that would make readers think, what would have happened in this book that she lost her hand? That must have to be something serious. It increases curiosity. Look at the other questions raised by this. I had to convince the police that he did not belong in jail. So if Kevin did not hurt her, then who hurt her? Why did they hurt her? And then there was no honest explanation I could give them. None they would believe. So that tells the reader that something must have happened which is unbelievable. Notice how the reader still does not know exactly what happened, why it happened, the details of how it all must have happened. And to know all of that, they'll have to read the book. Using the strategy of the retrospective hook, the author chooses to reveal just enough information to increase the reader's curiosity and to keep them reading. The next strategy to hook your reader is called the action hook. All you need to do is to throw your reader in the middle of an action sequence when things are happening right one after the other without a pause. This strategy sets up a continuous reading flow and gives your reader the sense of subconscious movement because they get engrossed in the action without thinking about the context. A novel which does this well is A Gathering of Old Men by Ernest J. Gaines. I heard Candy out in the front yard calling Grandmon. Me and Toddy and Minnie was sitting at the table eating, and Grandmon was at the stove looking in the pot to see if she had enough food left in there for supper. I could hear Candy out in the yard going, "Oh Aunt Glo, oh Aunt Glo, oh Aunt Glo." I jumped up from my chair to see what she wanted, but Grandmon told me to sit back down there and finish my food because my name wasn't Glo or Aunt. She looked at me long enough for it to set in, then she started out toward the door where Candy was still going, "Oh Aunt Glo, oh Aunt Glo, oh Aunt Glo." Notice how the author uses a lot of verbs. Hearing, looking, jumping, starting, running, all of that one after the other, and we still don't know the context. However, we tend to read it in a certain rhythm, a certain rhythmic flow. That's the effect you're trying to create with the action hook. I didn't read ahead, but the entire first chapter is written in this format, which begins with a lot of action happening, a lot of things happening, and then it ends with the inciting incident. And until the inciting incident, we don't even realize how we end up reading. Using the action hook, you can put your readers into the thick of the things and trick them into reading further than they intended to. At this point of the video, if you're getting any value out of it, please like the video, that really helps, and consider subscribing. I talk all about writing compelling novels and creating rich, vivid experiences for your readers. With that out of the way, let's move on to our next strategy, which is the personified hook. I know it sounds fancy, but it simply means zooming down on a lifeless object or an element and giving it life in your narration. Let's learn with an example. This is The Street by Anne Petrie. There was a cold November wind blowing through the 116th Street. It rattled the tops of garbage cans, sucked window shades out through the top of opened windows, and set them flapping back against the windows, and it drove most of the people off the street in the block between 7th and 8th Avenues, except for a few hurried pedestrians who bent double in an effort to offer the least possible exposed surface to its violent assault. It found every scrap of paper along the street: theatre throwaways, announcement of dances and lodge meetings, the heavy waxed paper that loaves of bread had been wrapped in, the thinner waxed paper that had enclosed sandwiches, old envelopes, newspapers. Fingering its way along the curb, the wind set the bits of paper to dancing high in the air, so that a barrage of paper swirled into the faces of the people on the street. It even took time to rush into doorways and areaways and find chicken bones and pork chop bones and push them along the curb. So look at what's happening there. The narrator has closed upon this element of wind and is trying to show us everything from the wind's perspective. It's a close third of the wind. That's why I called it the personified hook, because it brings a lifeless element, such as the wind, back to life. You can use this strategy to set up the primary emotions of the novel in the narrative tone itself. So for example, this book is all about the universe playing against the characters. And that's why the opening of the wind coming to life creates a sort of ominous feeling, and it sets the expectation for the reader. This strategy can be used as the one-shot goal to set up the right expectations for your reader and to give them a hint of how they might be feeling by the end of this novel. Coming up next is a controversial strategy, which is the dream hook. Do I even need to explain it? Now I get it. Using a dream opening in a novel has been done so many times by so many authors that it feels almost over-exhausting. But I think it still holds the potential to work wonders if you use it effectively. My favorite dream opening is from 100 Days of Sunlight by Abby Emmons. The black pickup truck flies through the red light, heading straight for us. My blood freezes in my veins. I want to scream, to warn Grandma, who sits next to me in the driver's seat, but my voice doesn't work. He'll hit us, he'll kill us. Those words repeat in my mind like a chant, getting louder and louder as the black blur gets closer and closer. I cringe, turning my back to the door and covering my face. I hear the loudest crash. It sounds like a bomb. My head whiplashes and slams into something hard behind me, and pain explodes through my body. The world goes dark. I wake up, gasping for air. I open my eyes, but I see nothing. 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 Darkness. I'm cold, but sweating. My ears ring. Sounds are muffled and distinct like a swarm of mosquitoes in my brain. I feel sheets underneath me, on top of me, curled inside my damn fists. I'm in bed. I'm home. It's okay. I'm home. It's just the dream again. Just my subconscious torturing me again. Again, again, again. They call it PTSD, the again, again, again. But I can think of a better name. Like hell. Do you see why that opening works so well? Multiple reasons. First, it tricks you into thinking that it's an action hook. It puts you right into the middle of the scene where the action is happening. And then when the narration tells you it's a dream, it also shows you why it's significant to the novel. It's not just any dream. It's a flashback that's been presented in a dream. Now, I'm not saying that this is the exact formula for dream openings to work, but you need to carefully package the dream opening into a fresh perspective so that it doesn't feel repetitive or ripped off from another novel. My next strategy to hook your readers on page 1 is the conversation hook. Now, this one is actually a hybrid of retrospective hook and action hook because it brings together both the strategies very well. In this strategy, details are still being revealed on the first page, but using dialogue which is in action by the characters. Here's an example from The Bitch by Pilar Quintana. I found her there this morning, paws up, said Donna Olidia, pointing to the spot on the beach where trash brought in or churned up by the sea collected. Branches, plastic bags, bottles. Poisoned? I think so. What do you do? Bury her? Donna Olidia nodded. The grandkids. Up in the cemetery? No, right here on the beach. Plenty of dogs died by poison. Some people said folks killed them on purpose, But Damaris couldn't believe anybody would do such a thing and thought they ate the rat bait people put out by mistake. Or maybe they actually ate the rats, which would be easy to catch after they were poisoned. "I'm sorry," said Damaris. So we learn a lot from this conversation. We first learn that someone has been poisoned. Then we learn it's a dog. Then we learn who the dog might belong to or what might not have happened to the dog. As you can see, it is very similar to a retrospective hook. You learn some details and then you want to know why these things happened, what might have happened, or what would happen further. But if you notice carefully, the retrospective hook can only be effectively used for a first-person narrative. Therefore, if you're working with a third person or an omniscient narrative, I highly recommend using the conversation starter to create the same effect from the retrospective hook. The next strategy on the list is a widely used one, and I like to call it the landscape hook. As evident by the name, in this strategy, the author chooses to use description in order to slowly settle the reader into the fictional world of the book. The best example for this one would be The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy. May in I Minem is a hot, brooding month. The days are long and humid. The river shrinks and black crows gorge on bright mangoes in still, dust-green trees. Red bananas ripen. Jackfruits burst. Dissolute blue bottles hum vacuously in the fruity air. Then they stun themselves against clear window panes and die, fatly baffled in the sun. The nights are clear, but suffused with sloth and sullen expectation. But by early June, the southwest monsoon breaks, and there are 3 months of wind and water with short spells of sharp, glittering sunshine that thrilled children snatch to play with. The countryside turns an immodest green. Boundaries blur as tapioca fences take root and bloom. Brick walls turn moss green. Pepper vines snake up electric poles. Wild creepers burst through laterite banks and spill across the flooded roads. Boats ply in the bazaars, and small fish appear in the puddles that fill the PWD potholes on the highways. It was raining when Ryle came back to Imemnem. So you can see the strategy of this opening is to create a rich, vivid experience for the reader to settle in their world. It's a slow start, but an immersive one. The trick to using this strategy effectively is to focus on evoking the visuals from your language. I mean, look at this. Red bananas ripen. Jackfruits burst. That's strong imagery. To be honest, it's a difficult strategy because not every writer can create this sort of visual imagery using their language. But if you like challenges, it's worth a try. Now, what if after looking at all those strategies, you still feel confused? Well then, my friend, I have the ultimate strategy for you, which is open with the basics. Just open with what's necessary. What's the one thing that the reader needs to know as soon as they enter your world? It's not even a strategy, it's pretty much common sense. Ask yourself, what's the most important thing your reader needs to know in order to be captured by your world? Here's the example. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal, thank you very much. They were the last people you'd expect to be involved in anything strange or mysterious because they just didn't hold with such nonsense. Mr. Dursley was the director of a firm called Grunnings, which made drills. He was a big, beefy man with hardly any neck, although he did have a very large moustache. Mrs. Dursley was thin and blonde and had nearly twice the usual amount of neck, which came in very useful as she spent so much of her time craning over garden fences, spying on the neighbors. The Dursleys had a small son called Dudley, and in their opinion, there was no finer boy anywhere. The Dursleys had everything they wanted, but they also had a secret, and their greatest fear was that somebody would discover it. They didn't think they could bear it if anyone found out about the Potters. Mrs. Potter was Mrs. Dursley's sister, but they hadn't met for several years. In fact, Mrs. Dursley pretended she didn't have a sister, because her sister and her good-for-nothing husband were as un-Dursleyish as it was possible to be. The Dursleys shuddered to think what the neighbors would say if the Potters arrived in the street. The Dursleys knew that the Potters had a small son too, but they had never ever seen him. This boy was another good reason for keeping the Potters away. They didn't want Dudley mixing with such a child. If you don't already know, that was the opening of Harry Potter. And no, I don't even want to name the author, that's something very different. But the reason why this book is on the list is because it follows the ultimate strategy: simplicity. Notice how the opening gives you just enough information required to adapt to the narrative voice and feel curious. And that's enough to keep you reading. That's all you need. That's it, the basics. At this point of your thinking, great, now I know how to get started, but how do I decide what are the most important things I need to reveal in the beginning? Do I really need an outline? Well, not exactly. Check out this video right here where I teach you how to write your novel without an outline in just 30 days. Alright, that is me, Srishti Rathour, signing off for this video. Thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next in this video right here. Bye!